Alright guys, hi, welcome to another video by 2IM. This is our definitive syllabus series, so we'll be going through each section, that is Quant, VARC and DILR, and we'll be taking a deep dive and we'll be trying to analyze what are the key points to each section, how could you structure your prep, structure your syllabus in such a way that you're able to effectively cover each of these three sections. So in one of our videos, we've already seen quants, and today we'll be doing VARC. So first off, before we even begin, just like to remind you guys, the official syllabus is rather vague. So there's no properly defined official syllabus for quants, VARC or DILR. It's conventional. They've been asking passages, they've been asking verbal ability questions of a certain kind, and this has been happening for the past 5 years. And so there's a high likelihood that they'll continue with this for CAT 25 or CAT 26, and which is what we are going by, because officially as such there's no defined syllabus for CAT prep. So just be aware, anyone who says that they know the defined syllabus or this is official probably don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so our knowledge of the syllabus is empirical. It's based on what we have seen. There's no theoretical prescribed syllabus that CAT gives out. Now coming to VARC, it consists of two sections. There is the RC part and then there's the VA part. So RC stands for reading comprehension and VA stands for verbal ability. RC usually has 4 passages which have 4 questions each, and verbal ability is usually 8 questions in total. Now these 8 questions usually come from these 4 types. So there are para jumbles, there are odd ones out, there are set insertion types, and finally there are para summaries. So there are 4 types which are very common, which CAT has been testing its candidates or its aspirants on for the past few years, and for the sake of convention, hoping that this is what they'll do this year too, this is the syllabus as we understand it, and as how everybody understands it. So we'll go through each section in a deeper way, in a much more detailed manner, and try to figure out what it's about. So we look at an analysis of all the reading comprehensions that have been asked, or that have appeared rather, in the past 5 years. So there were 3 slots each year, 5 years, and in each slot there are 4 passages. So that is 4 into 3 into 5, which is 60. So we went through all 60 passages, tried to classify them. Now we faced a difficulty in trying to give them a single label. It turns out that over the years, CAT passages have become complex, not just in the material or the ideas that they discuss, but also the fact that these are becoming increasingly interdisciplinary. So gone are those days where you have a passage just on history or just on political science or just on science. The boundaries are being blurred. It's getting increasingly difficult to tell if a passage is purely history or purely science or purely sociology. So the lines are blurred, and we try to do the best that we could with the kind of understanding that we have. We've tried to classify the passages. We could not apply a single label to almost a third of them. We could not do it. We simply could not do it. So around 33%, that is 31.7%. So almost 20 passages have clear dual themes. You can't classify them as a single into a single neat label. You can't say it's purely sociology or it's purely business or economics. So this theme of having dual themes is something that is becoming increasingly popular with CAT, and we believe that this percentage is going to go up with time. So that's one thing that we noticed. The other thing that we noticed is that there's a predominance of history, science, and sociology in the CAT RCs. So if you look at the data here, history was a theme that was repeated 14 times, science was a theme that was repeated 13 times, and sociology was a theme again 13 times. These were seen across like 14 passages, my bad. So these three themes enjoy the lion's share. If you add these up, it is 14, 13, and 13, which is around, that is 26, this is 40. The total number of themes that we had to give out is not 60. Like I said, some passages have dual themes. So that number comes to around, if I remember while I was doing my calculations, it was around 79. Because 19 passages had extra themes. So out of 79 themes, 14, 13, and 13, that's 40. So almost half is history, science, and sociology. So if you are somebody who's reading material, who's going through articles, we recommend that you read everything. But if you come across articles on history, science, and sociology, statistically speaking, these have been dominant in CAT. We are not asking you to read these, we're not asking you to read only these. Of course, you have to read all kinds of material. But the stats show that these three are more likely to feature in your CAT RC. Because they have been dominant for the past 5 years. Then come, well, before I move further, history requires context. You need to think of events which happened years ago where for the lack of a better word, socioeconomic conditions were very different. Science requires a lot of analytical thinking. Science articles, science passages require you to be very sharp and discerning with the details. And sociology asks you to dive deeper into human concepts, human ideals. These are not ideas that you would magically be comfortable with on the day of the exam. So it's best that you start reading a lot about at least these topics. I mean, of course, we should read everything. But these topics have been carrying a lot of weightage, and the more you read, the more likely you are to be comfortable when the passage does come, and the less likely you are to see it as a foreign or alien concept. So there were passages on stoicism, rationality, so philosophy and sociology, philosophy also sneaks in. It's a major part of what is being asked over the past few years, apart from the first three that we discussed. And psychology is no longer being asked independently. It's often fused with sociology or anthropology or other related allied concepts. So the reason why I'm telling you guys all this is I'm trying to emphasize the importance of cross-disciplinary reading. And what that means is you have to step outside your comfort zone. Gone are the days where you could just read articles which were comfortable to you and you could still have a decent chance of scoring a high percentile. You have to be comfortable grasping and mingling very diverse and different ideas and trying to see the links between them. So these could be very different fields, these could be very diverse fields, and you need to get comfortable doing that. On the flip side, political science, law, education, language are kind of niche. These weren't seen a lot, but that still does not mean that you should not read articles from these. CAT can do whatever it likes. The people who set CAT, rather, when I say CAT, I don't mean like CAT, the CAT is not a living entity. The CAT is the people who make the CAT paper. So when I say CAT, I mean the people who make it. Now CAT may change, may entirely do a 180 and ask you, throw you articles which are heavy on political science or language or law, and we have no defense. We can't say, oh, well, you know, for the past 5 years, you guys barely asked anything, so why the change now? We can't do that. We really can't do that. These slides are the data, the raw data that we extracted from the passages. That is our classification of all these past 5 years. For your interest, I'll just leave these out here. You can maybe cross-verify, you can go through it yourselves. All right. So I'm just going to very quickly blaze through these slides. Okay. You guys can take screenshots if you want. All right. So that was the raw data. Now, the kind of question types that are asked along with the passages also warrant a deeper look. So the most famous, the most common question type that comes are main idea questions, central theme questions. These were roughly 30%, 25 to 30% of all the questions that have been asked, that is with the passages over the past 5 years. A huge weightage, 60 to 72 questions in total. So these test your understanding of what the author is trying to say, what they are trying to say through this passage. How well are you grasping this idea? Are you able to pick up on the different nuances that they're trying to make? How well defined is your understanding of what you've just read? Those are main idea questions, and more often than not, they're quite straightforward. They do ask you what is the main idea. Sometimes these may be veiled as what's the title, what could be an appropriate title for this passage, what are the set of keywords that best describe this passage. But the underlying skill that they're testing remains the same, which is how well are you able to extract the main idea. Now these are common across all topics, but they are seen more in history, science, and sociology. They grasp, like I said, they grasp your understanding of the bigger picture. If it's a sociology passage, it's going to test how well you've understood a very nuanced take on a certain social issue. If it's a science passage, it may try to test your understanding of a rather complicated scientific concept. So this is why understanding the main idea is a crucial key skill, and 25 to 30% questions are main idea as far as RCs are concerned. So it's a vital skill. You can't skip it at your own peril. Next comes inference, and from a purely academic perspective, you can argue that main idea is in a way inference, because main idea is nothing but what you're inferring from the passage. So although we've tried to be very strict with our classification, where we have said, okay, listen, main idea is not inference, but the key skill is the same. Inference questions are quite heavy. 35 to 40% of the questions are inference questions. And if you consider the fact that main idea is nothing but a kind of inference, that number suddenly shoots up to 60, 70%, almost 75%. So you understand how important the skill of inferring what the author is saying is, how important that is. This requires reading between the lines. This is not factual. This is your ability to almost grasp what the author is saying without them explicitly saying so. Okay, so questions are, what does the author mean by saying this line? Why does the author bring up the example of, say, XYZ in this paragraph or in that paragraph? And these are all inference questions. These are generally very tricky, and these are often seen in abstract passages about philosophy, art, culture. Abstract notions that are not very easy to understand or easy to visualize. Again, high frequency is reflecting CAT's push towards more reasoning-based questions. They're looking for managers who can extract data and who can also not just extract data, but also read between the lines, have that power of interpreting data properly, correctly. So which is why these questions are going up in weightage and in importance. Now, sorry. Up next are specific detail questions or factual questions. Now these have seen a decline over the past 5 years. Like I said, CAT is moving more towards inference and main idea and application. So these have kind of declined. 15 to 20% is not a huge percentage. These are rather straightforward. They just test your how keen or how closely or how keenly were you reading the passage. Were you able to pick up this particular data point, or were you able to pick up this particular nuance which was stated quite explicitly? Okay. So these are more common in data-rich passages, like maybe an economics passage or a business passage, and they test your retention of data points. Although it's not necessary when you're reading a passage, but they also kind of test, were you cognizant enough to notice that certain data was discussed in this paragraph. Things like that, factual, easier than inference and main idea questions, very doable. Up next we have vocabulary and tone questions. Now these are not straightforward. You need to have read and accumulated a respectable repository of information from reading RCs, reading passages, reading editorials, different kinds of reading material across different sources, newspapers, books, online articles, so much so that you are comfortable with the tone. You're able to sense if the author is being sarcastic, or if the author is being very serious, or is his tone cautionary, or is he just stating facts in a very neutral way. All these minor nuances, they simply don't come out of thin air. You won't get these on the day of the exam. You have to read extensively to get good at this. There's no shortcut as such. And like I said, they check for nuanced comprehension. And you will see this again featuring a lot in passages which are abstract. Oh my God, sorry. So like I said, abstract passages like arts, culture, philosophy, they're seen more often there. Of course, these can be asked anywhere, but they're seen more often in these kind of passages. And then you have author's purpose, structure. Now the difference between author's purpose, structure and main idea questions is a slight difference. These two in a way are main idea. The skill you need to develop to crack these questions is similar to your main idea skill, but this is more structural, and this is an understanding of why an author writes something where they do write it. So if you are into GMAT, these questions feature a lot in GMAT, where they test how well you've understood the structure of the passage. For example, there could be a passage where an author could start with a statistic, and they could then underline or introduce a theory, and in the next passage, the next paragraph, they could go against that theory. So the structure is they introduced a data point, then a hypothesis, and then in the next paragraph, they went against the hypothesis. So if you're able to have a bird's eye view of what's happening across the paragraphs, you can answer these questions with a great deal of comfort. Okay. Now, again, like I said, they test structural awareness, and they often show up in layered passages. When I say layered, there are a lot of literal elements in that passage. Literary elements rather, not literal elements, literary elements, like say throwing a metaphor or throwing a data point and then trying to deduce a hypothesis, and then like doing a full 180 and then going against that hypothesis by introducing further evidence. This is just one type of structure. There are many different types of structures. You will start to see them the more you read. And I think finally you have application extension questions. These are very rare, but these are the ones that people who do end up scoring high in VARC, they nail these, they get these right, because these are a very nice way of bagging 3 extra marks if you've understood the passage, if you've understood the main idea, if you're sharp enough to see the nuances involved in the examples that the author has given or in the overall flow of the passage, you can get really good at these. I'll give you an example. Now, an example of an application extension question could be scenarios which have nothing to do with the passage, but have an underlying theme which mirrors that which was discussed in the passage. So the passage could be about something like, sending Australians, the passage could be about how Australia came about as a colony. And so back in the late 1700s, the authorities in Britain thought we should get rid of our criminals, and they wanted to send them off to a very remote world which was cut off from England, and they wanted to basically forget about these people. Now, an application extension question would give you options which have nothing to do with the passage, but there's an underlying theme. So the options could be, which of these four options best fits the Australian prison experiment. And then the options could be deporting criminals to Mars, or sending criminals to a fort within your own country. And these test for the tiny nuances that you have picked up while you were reading the passage. So these are very interesting questions, very rare, 5%, even less than that, but very doable. And if you have a nice grasp of the passage, these are points in the bag. So we just quickly go through the takeaways. You have to read a lot of material, get comfortable with reading different kinds of material. You have to read extensively. Get comfortable with extracting the main idea for topics which you're not comfortable with. Try to realize what's the big picture. Get comfortable with the structure of the passage, why the author introduced a certain element at this point. Again, all of these things come with extensive reading. So I'm just going to put the points here so that you guys can maybe take a screenshot. Is there one more? No, that's it. So you guys can maybe take a screenshot. It's a summary of whatever I've just said. Just give you a few seconds. You can take a screenshot of this. Okay. Now we come to verbal ability questions, 4 types. So PJ stands for para jumbles. Okay. So you could be given a bunch of sentences, and you have to rearrange these into a coherent paragraph. Okay. Sorry. Coherent paragraph. Now, the key skills that you need to do this is you should be able to understand that more often than not, the opening is very general. So look for a general statement. Try to link cause and effect. There's usually a chronological flow, and you can maybe link events based on that chronological flow, or there could be a flow of an idea. And the way that idea is discussed is that the idea might be introduced, and then in some other line that idea might be expanded upon, and then in some other line there could be a counter argument to that idea. So if you're able to notice all these different flows and themes across the 4 lines, you can get good at para jumble. So like I said, cause and effect or chronology, those are the 2 tools you might be using to assemble your answer. Now the way to practice this is, of course, there's our material, there's 2IM material, there are previous year questions. Apart from all this, which goes without saying, you'll have to practice previous year questions and material. Outside of this, if you're very curious, if you want to go the extra mile, if you're reading, say, a news article, and if you have access to AI, which everybody does nowadays, why don't you take the article, copy it, paste it onto an AI, ask it to scramble it for you, try solving it, or ask the AI itself to feed you scrambled sentences and try to piece it back together. So that's one way of doing it. And of course, the other way is, like I said, There's practice, there's PYQs, there's material from coaching providers, 2IM material. All right. Like I said, look for first, last, general statements, more specific statements, chronological order. That's your starting point with para jumble. Then we go to para summary. Now this is very similar to main idea. This is basically main idea but in a mini format. But generally these tiny passages are very dense and very nuanced. So you need to be very careful when you're reading these. Slow down if necessary. Slow down even more than your what I'm trying to say is slow down even more than you would if you were reading a tough part in a passage, because more often than not these are very dense and these are not easy to understand in the first reading. Be very careful. The skill set is the same. You have to extract the main idea and you have to choose the best option. Mind you, the answer may not be perfect. The answer may not be perfect. The options given may not have, none of them might have the perfect main idea, but you have to eliminate and go for the one which does the best job of encapsulating the main idea. Okay. So para summary, like I said, the exercise, the skill that you need to be having is to figure out what the author is saying. What's the main point? Best way to do it, whenever you're reading something, say if you're reading an editorial, try summarizing it. If you're doing leisure reading, any kind of reading, try summarizing what you're reading. Try to summarize it in a few lines, 2 or 3 lines. Try to make sure you're able to capture all the major nuances that are there in the article in those 2 to 3 lines. And like I said, there's an RC overlap here. It links to the main idea. The RC main idea exercise is what it links to. Now these type of questions are called odd ones out. Very similar to para jumble. Para jumble gives you 4 scrambled sentences and asks you to form a coherent passage or paragraph rather. These give you 5 sentences usually, and you have to pick the odd one out. Now the odd one out is such that if you remove it, the remaining 4 can be put together into a very coherent paragraph. So the skills you need here, the skills you need here are similar to para jumble, but the way you go about it is a little different. Instead of wasting your energy trying to put together a paragraph, what you do instead is you try to weed out the odd one. You try to weed it out, and so there are 2 layers of difficulty to this. The first layer of difficulty is thematically one sentence is very sneakily talking about something else. And if you're good with this, if you get comfortable with reading, if your comprehension is of a high level, if you go through the lines a couple of times, you can actually figure out, hey, this particular sentence is kind of going off on a tangent. Okay, that is difficulty level 1. Now CAT may complicate things. Thematically, all the 5 sentences could be similar, and then you have to kind of rearrange them and see which 4 give me the most coherent paragraph, and that's a lot more difficult. But that's a bridge that we'll cross when we come to. So that's a video for another day. Right now, I just want to tell you guys what odd ones out are about, and that is the point of the video today. So I'll just stick to that scope. I'm not going to extend it. Okay. Now these are sentence insertions, kind of similar to, they test you on your comprehension. If you have read a lot of diverse articles, if you get comfortable with the kind of with the convention that is followed. I know what I'm saying doesn't exactly make sense, but if you read enough number of articles, if you have read enough, you kind of can predict what the next line should be. If you've read a certain paragraph, if you're reading through it, sometimes you can almost predict, hey, okay, so if the author is talking about, say, the refugee crisis in Syria, the next sentence should be maybe a statistic or maybe a further elaboration of this. If the author is talking about how, say, football clubs in England are becoming increasingly capitalistic, the next line could be something like an example. Okay, why is it so capitalistic? Or a deeper dive into the capitalistic elements that are being seen. So that's the skill set you need to develop. You need to get good at taking this sentence and reason out that, okay, it best fits at say 4 or 3, and it best fits because it provides the most context to what was preceding it and to what succeeds it. Okay, so that's the skill you need to develop in a very succinct, I'm putting this out in a very brief way. That's the skill you need to develop. Again, read. It's no secret, guys, VARC is 90% reading. The more you read, the better you get, simply. Like you get inherently better at it. Like your base level just goes up. So keep reading. If you want to have a targeted practice, maybe take short articles, remove sentences, try to rearrange them and see why they don't make sense. Or you could maybe use AI, ask you to quiz it on this particular topic. You could use AI for all 4 verbal ability questions. They would do you a world of good. And yeah, that was our discussion on VARC, the entire syllabus. Like I said, there's no official syllabus. The syllabus is the questions that have appeared in the past and how best you can prepare yourself to answer these questions in the future. So yeah, that was it. If you found any kind of value in this video, please do like, share it with your friends, like the video, and please subscribe. It helps our channel a lot. It helps us, it motivates us to come up with even better content each time we come before you. So I hope you guys have a great day, man. And thank you for watching this video.